Hey everybody, and welcome to Nerds of the Round Table, a show where we find and discuss the nerdiest news from the last week. My name's Jack, and I'm here with my older brother and OG gamer, Paul, and we'll start this week the way we always do. Hey Paul, how have you been, and what have you been up to?
Hey Jack, I'm doing well. So this week I've been playing a little more mobile than normal. So
Just happy you're playing it all.
Yeah. I've been playing a bit of Watch Dogs on my iPhone.
Okay.
And I've been playing a couple mobile games, one being Clash Royale. Decided to check that one out. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other, again, with the same controller that I'm using to stream Watch Dogs, I'm playing through the port of Grand Theft Auto 3 on the iPhone. So
Wow.
It's fun to go back and play that game. How about you?
Pretty much all Neo all the time. That game is exquisite. It is all that I want to play. It's been an interesting experience comparing it to Bloodborne. I kind of did a little bit of that, on our last episode, so I don't need to retread that, I guess. But I'm just enjoying the hell out of it.
So what's keeping you hooked?
The combat system is so perfect for me because I enjoy the challenge that a game like a Souls game or like Bloodborne brings. Where you have to be precise, you have to understand exactly what your enemies are going to do, and what their motions mean, and how in this game with the have I talked to you about the stance system?
No, you haven't.
So there's like 6 or 7 different weapon types. There's like sword, dual swords, spear, kusurigama, and maybe like one other type of weapon that I'm not thinking of. Like giant axes, like great axes or great hammers or whatever.
Okay.
And for each of those weapons, you can hold it in either a low stance, a mid stance, or a high stance. And what that allows you to do is change the amount of damage you do and the quickness of your strikes. So if you're in high stance, your strikes take a little bit longer, but they're going to do like the maximum damage that the weapon can do. If you're in mid stance, it's a little bit quicker attacks. It's easier to dodge. It's easier to block. And if you unlock countering, if you buy countering abilities through the skill menu, then a lot of those are centered around the mid stance. And the low stance allows for really quick dodges and movements and really fast attacks. So for every different weapon, there's all these different levels and all these different skills attached to those different stances that you have to learn. So it never gets boring. Yeah, it never gets boring at all.
So does the focus on that type of gameplay, does it make the story less interesting, or do you even have time to focus on the story? What's the deal there?
It's funny that you mentioned story because it's one of the I never talk about it when I talk about Neo because it is like a Souls game. The thing that everyone wants to talk about and the thing that everyone notices first is the purity of the gameplay and the mechanics and how great that is and how challenging it is. But the story, in comparison to those games, is more coherent, but it could easily be ignored as well. For the most part, when you are actually playing the game, it doesn't really matter where you are or what you're doing or who you're doing it for. And honestly, you're kind of in warring states, Japan. There are so many players on the table that it's actually really hard. And you're kind of this, Ronin a little bit. You're the wandering samurai. It's hard to keep track of who you're working for at any given time. Okay. So if you wanted to follow the story, it's more readily available to you than in any game like Neo, but it's just as meaningless, ultimately. Okay. Yeah.
Well, it's funny that you bring up Neo, and I know I'm kind of jumping out of order here, but
whatever.
For Honor kind of reminds me of that with the complexity in the gameplay and mechanics. because there's been a lot of focus on the sword play in For Honor.
Absolutely.
And it's gotten good reviews based on those mechanics as well. They're supposedly pretty solid.
Yeah.
Have you heard anything about that?
Well, so I all of my knowledge of For Honor is secondhand. I wasn't able to find the time to get into the beta or play any of that stuff really. But what I've heard people talk about a lot is the how knowing how you're going to match up against your enemy and learning how the enemy player plays or how the enemy AI controls is key to finding success in these situations. It makes me feel like, after playing Neo and enjoying kind of offbeat multiplayer games, like not, just first-person shooters or whatever, like I think it's a game I would probably enjoy, but I don't know if I'm going to get to it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so I've read a bit about it, and I played a tiny bit of the technical tests that they had out before the open beta, and looking at it, it was kind of cool, but there are a lot of mechanics to it. Yeah. So depending on which class you are, or whether it's a Viking or a knight or a samurai, and there's different classes within each of those three major groups, and then there's also the kind of similar to Neo, the different weapons and the different styles of fighting, and the complexity in the mechanics is there too. So you can fake in one direction and dodge up versus block low, and there's all of these mechanics that you have to keep an eye out for, which makes for a very complex system, but one that, according to reviews at least, seems to work fairly well. So it's probably not something I'm going to pick up anytime soon, just because it's not really my style of game. It is a sword fighting game that is focused, I think, almost exclusively on multiplayer. So that just kind of falls way outside of my area of interest.
Sure. I mean, it's a game that, like, I don't know. I applaud Ubisoft for chasing down these weird leads. I liked their Assassin's Creed multiplayer back in the day because it was something so dramatically different from every other multiplayer experience out there. That kind of like hide and seek, attacker, defender, hiding in plain sight among like all these NPCs that look kind of like you. So you need to act as much like a computer as possible, and need to understand how they move and how they act. I always appreciated what they were trying to do with multiplayer, and so I get and I like what they're doing with For Honor, and I think it's one of those games. It's one of those games that I think if Neo wasn't out, and if Mass Effect wasn't coming, and if I wasn't gonna have to start following all this Switch news soon, like I might go out for. There might be a reason enough for me to go and buy it and play it. But sure. I just don't see it happening, Yeah,
my backlog's long enough that I think I can wait on this one for a while.
Yeah.
But that was one of the other things that you wanted to chat about, was this Mass Effect, combat gameplay.
You're just all over the place. You're walking all over my transitions.
I know, but
it's fine.
I'm making them. They are related. But the Mass Effect gameplay looks pretty nice as well. The combat system looks pretty good. The variety looks pretty good as well. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, watching the gameplay trailer, I was blown away, I guess, by how much it looked like exactly what I was expecting out of Mass Effect. Exactly what I was expecting out of a Mass Effect combat system that has had several years to grow and learn from what the rest of the industry has done. And I remember playing Mass Effect 3 and thinking that the combat system was pretty solid. It felt a lot like the combat was in service to moving the player through the story and giving them challenges to defeat. Whereas
Right.
like watching this gameplay trailer, I was struck by the fact that like that looks like a lot of fun. Like, to me, the fun in Mass Effect always came from interacting with other characters, and like, the combat was good, but it was always like a means to an end. Whereas this time it kind of looks like the combat might be fun in its own right.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly think the combat system has evolved significantly since Mass Effect 1 through Andromeda.
Yeah.
I like that there's a huge variety in the types of weapons and the types of powers and things like that. I look at a lot of games like Mass Effect, and I just kind of think, wow, there's just a lot of complexity in, choosing which weapon or which power-up you want to use at any given point in time. But I guess, if you've been kind of keeping up with gaming or if you are a relatively new gamer, that's just how things have always been. There's always been, yeah. I mean, I don't know, when I first started, you had one motion, jump.
Yeah.
And you landed on the other guy and killed him, or you landed on the other side of him and ran away.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much it. There was there weren't all of these. You didn't need, a 13 button controller in order to get what you needed done.
And like I know what you're talking about too, because like I've been talking about how much I love Neo and everything, and it's to wrap it back around to that, I guess it's absurdly complex. Like I haven't even covered, there's I talked to you about the stances and the different weapons, and there's also ranged weapons, and there's also abilities as far as like magic and ninjutsu and like all these things that you have to keep in mind the whole time that you're playing. So, yeah. I mean, you might be right. This might just be the way that gaming is going these days in an effort to keep people interested and keep new things coming.
Yeah, I guess I'm just concerned. In the same way that, you could probably barely tell me the story that's occurring in Neo. Mm-hmm. I don't want the story of Mass Effect to be, somewhat diluted by this constant, focus on combat systems or a player's need to spend mental energy on that as opposed to really just getting immersed in the story.
Yeah, absolutely. And like by example, I was playing Neo earlier today, and there are these kind of combat challenges that you can go through to unlock new abilities. So like if you want to unlock higher level ninja shit, you have to fight the master. You have to fight the master ninja guy, right? He has a name. I just don't remember what it is.
Yeah.
But he, there's the novice level, the adept level, and the veteran level. And I was able to finally beat this guy on the veteran level, so I could unlock all the ninjutsu. And I spent, 30 minutes probably, I think, just doing this one fight over and over again and dying because I was literally under a constant barrage of all the different mechanics in the game happening all at once. Yeah. Like when I did the veteran straight up, samurai combat challenge, like I just had to be really good at fighting and dodging and moving and stuff like that, and that was fine. Like I was used to that. But fighting the ninja master, like he's like throwing bombs at me and throwing out caltrips to set up areas where I can't walk, and then like throwing shuriken at me, and then while I'm blocking all this stuff, he's charging up to me and starting to slash at me with his blades, and I'm just like basically screaming for 10 minutes straight trying to keep up with everything he's doing. And there is something to over complexity. I think that is a real area of concern in modern gaming. There is that there was a certain purity to run right and jump at the right time,
Right. Yeah. I mean, people automatically assume that getting more and more of something, things, or complexity is going to make games better. Yeah. When the reality is all it does is make them more complex.
Yeah. Well, speaking of a simpler time, the the old school Pokemon are no longer the only ones available in Pokemon Go.
I was going to take that transition a different way.
Oh.
Speaking of the ever-growing complexity in games, there are over 80 more Pokemon coming.
Yeah, in Pokemon Go. Man, you're on board. I like this. I don't. It's not all on me anymore. But anyway, so there's more Pokemon in Pokemon Go. I mean, that's basically the long and short of this story. But at the same time, the reason I wanted to talk about it is, do you think this has a chance of revitalizing interest in Pokemon Go? Because obviously it released, it was extremely popular, it did very well, and I'm pretty sure they're still making them money these days, but I doubt it's nearly as much as it was at its peak.
I think people's attention spans are fairly short when it comes to mobile gaming.
Yeah.
And if you are looking at something like the expansion in Pokemon Go, I think it's going to be more about the marketing done around it than the actual changes themselves.
Sure.
Because I think the people that are still playing Pokemon Go are going to appreciate these changes, but the people who have stopped playing Pokemon Go aren't really going to know that there have been changes made or potentially really even care.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I think people are going to look at Pokemon Go and be like, well, we did that. We did the thing for the month, and then we all stopped. And, people aren't going to be going back.
I mean, I think they'll probably see a bump in users, but it's not going to be like when they first got released. And also, when does this happen? When does later this week, right?
Yeah, I think pretty soon.
Yeah.
They announced it, and it was happening fairly soon.
Okay, so right in the middle of winter. Okay.
Yeah.
Probably not a great time. I mean, that was one of the things that was a huge benefit to the original release, was that it was in the summer and people could go outside and walk around. Yeah. I don't know. Do people want to go slushing through snow in, New York City and, just to catch Pokemon?
Yeah, it really makes me think that Pokemon Go was very much of a time and a place, and I don't think it can ever come back the way it was, because now they don't even have the nostalgia working for them nearly as much as they used to. When you have the original 150, people know that. People who no longer care about video games or Pokemon know that 150. And I think with each successive generation of Pokemon, you see less and less return on that nostalgia investment, if you will.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah. So let's see.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It'll be interesting. I don't really have much to add there. I never really got into Pokemon Go in the first place. So
we never talked about that when that came out. You weren't interested in
Pokemon Go? Not really my thing. No, I never really got into Pokemon, the original stuff. So when Go came around, I thought, oh, maybe this would be time to get into it, and it just never really happened. I had no real interest in the story or the characters, and the premise was go walk around to various places and take virtual pictures of things.
Yeah, dude.
And that didn't really
you're about to send me over the edge with my feelings about Pokemon Go. Like, I was so, it's so not representative of what Pokemon actually is, and how good Pokemon can be at its best. And I'm not surprised if you weren't interested in the original Pokemon series, that this wouldn't do anything for you, because it's not even Pokemon. It's the most neutered version of Pokemon that they could possibly come up with. But anyway,
I mean, the only thing I can make from a complete outsider's point of view is you're supposed to show up at random places and capture certain Pokemon by taking a picture of them.
Kind of taking a picture. It's like a little it's kind of like a cup and ball game more than pictures. It's like a
what?
The cup and the ball, you toss the.
Stop saying cup and balls at the same time.
The cup and ball. No, okay. You know what I'm talking about. You have to throw it by sliding your finger along the screen. You have to throw the Pokemon ball to the Pokeball to the Pokemon. Yeah, it's dumb. Anyway, speaking of Nintendo, the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild expansion pack was announced, which is interesting for Nintendo. They don't usually do DLC. I think they did some with Mario Kart 8. and might have seen some success with that. But this is more akin to like a season pass, which I'm not sure they've done before. And I was kind of curious, like, do you think this marks a new trend for Nintendo? Do you think they're going to continue along these lines? Or is this like a one-off for one of their most popular franchises?
The way that I look at it is, in so many ways, Nintendo tries to be a different and unique gaming hardware and software company. But in other ways, they kind of still have to follow the trends. And the trends are pretty clear in games these days, especially open world games where, you build these huge open worlds so that you can drop in additional content to make more money.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And at $20, it's it's right around where DLC kind of first started for expansions. Now there are certain games that have it at $30 and $40, which is crazy. But we can have a different conversation about paid DLC some other time.
I'm sure we will.
Yeah, but at $20, I would just be curious to see exactly what they're offering in those paid DLC in terms of number of hours of gameplay. Because to be honest, maybe I just haven't been following it closely enough, but I don't know how long the gameplay is supposed to be in the base game, so I can't even make a guess as to what expansion packs might be.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know off the top of my head. Like, I haven't been following this game closely enough if they have announced that to have caught it. But what they've said. So here's the thing. This is a multi-layered conversation that I'm about to start into. So pick and choose what you want to respond to at will. But
okay.
On the YouTube video, there have been 500,000 views, right?
Okay.
And the upvotes to downvotes are almost 50-50, which is kind of absurd. Normally, you would expect it to be kind of more positive, but when you see a company like Nintendo making this controversial decision, I guess I'm not surprised that they've got like 14,000 downvotes on this. And I don't know, I just thought that was interesting. Like, it seems like people who are seeking out this information are not pleased with that fact that they're doing this. But what they're releasing for that $20, it seems fairly substantial, but it's also like it's ripe to piss people off. Because on the 3rd, when the game comes out, they're releasing content that day. So you are getting day one DLC basically, where you get 3 new treasure chests in the game on that day that contain useful items and exclusive in-game clothing.
Yeah,
that's gonna piss people off, especially in a series that people are very attached to, like Zelda, where they want to feel like they're getting the full experience from the jump.
Yeah, I mean, most companies that want to nickel and dime you with DLC are at least smart enough not to release it the same day as the game.
These days.
Are you sure that is it the season? So the season pass you can purchase right away, but are the expansions, like the actual expansion packs, those are later this year? Yeah.
Yeah, so from the information I have here in their video says that's what you get on day one, basically, right?
Okay, so you get little items on day one.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the summer of 2017, so this summer of this year, they're adding a new Cave of Trials challenge, a new hard mode, and an additional map feature. Now, the reason I wanted to separate these conversations out is because that sounds like shit that you should already have in the game. Like, there's nothing there. There's nothing there that's like a new story or a new huge thing. It's like a Cave of Trials is like that's like what, a high score chasing thing, like or something along those lines. That's something that people like to have in the game on day one. A new hard mode? Are you telling me that you're adding hard as DLC? Like, that is, you get to choose your difficulty as DLC?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe there's more to that I don't know, but that just sounds absurd right off the bat. And a new map feature. What the fuck? What is that? And like, why isn't it already in the game? And that's it for that DLC pack.
So that's interesting. My thoughts on it shifted twice in the 30 seconds you were describing that. So so my initial thought was, oh, so they're not releasing new story content right away. That kind of reverses my original thought. So that's good. And then I switched right back when you described they weren't really delivering any new story content in the first DLC in the summer either. So that seems a bit disappointing, and I'm not surprised. Even you look at the people who were waiting and super excited to get the Switch, and maybe they felt a little surprised at the price of accessories and what Nintendo was charging for certain things. And then the game that's going to come out on day one, they've already being primed to pay another $20 to effectively get content that let's be honest, should have been released as part of the base game, or at least a patch. I mean,
so half that stuff sounds
if you can't figure out how to do hard mode for day one, that should be a patch, not a bonus feature that you have to pay for.
I mean, because so hard mode at its simplest is probably just like adjusted numbers. Like enemies have 1.2 times life and you do 0.8 damage or something along those lines. And that's right. A vast oversimplification, I know, but that is kind of hard mode at its simplest, right? Right. Now, at most, it's like adding new enemies to different areas of the game, maybe giving bosses an extra attack or two, or like, whatever that means, or like shortening their animations so you have to be more on top of your game. But like, none of that sounds like something that shouldn't already be there. Hard mode, unless it's like something dramatic that I don't even know what they would be talking about, should not be something that's part of DLC.
Yeah, I mean, at the point where you're simply adding some potential replay value, that's pretty weak.
Yeah.
I mean, generally, DLC should be focused on expanding the universe or expanding the storyline.
Right.
Not just making it easier for you to play the same thing over again.
Yeah. And again, like this offer to purchase an expansion pass before people even have the console on which they will play the game that has the expansion pack.
Yeah.
That just seems weird. And then, so the second DLC pack comes out in the holiday of 2017, and it says a new original story, new dungeon, and additional challenges, which is the last two are pretty vague, like in terms of what size and scope. But the new original story is interesting. I'm not sure what it's going to mean for fans, and I mean, I'm sure they'll give you an opportunity to purchase this outside of this expansion pass, but I also wonder how that seems like the more robust DLC pack. Yeah. I wonder how much they're going to charge for that if you're getting it outside of the expansion pass.
That's disappointing.
Yeah.
Well.
I don't know. Yeah, we don't need to harp on this too much longer, but...
No, I'm done.
Yeah. Speaking of new ventures, though, Bethesda's Todd Howard is hinting at 3 new games that they are hopefully going to be talking a bit about at E3. So I was wondering if you had heard much about it. They also mention Fallout 4 VR in this article. So I'm not sure if you saw anything about this or if you have any opinions on it. I'd like to hear what you think.
Yeah, so there's the article you're referencing from Glixel talks about 3 new games, 2 full classically Bethesda games, I guess they call them, and a mobile game.
So classically Bethesda, it's going to be busted and glitchy, but still somehow a ton of fun.
Yeah, well, and there's another article on roadtovr.com that talks about Fallout 4 VR and how great it's looking. So classic Bethesda glitchiness will probably cause immediate vomiting in VR.
That's almost exactly what I was going to say. I can't wait to see how fast people get sick when the world turns upside down and you fall through the environment.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to it. I think one of the interesting things about a VR game from Bethesda is, if it makes sense. There's a lot of very obvious ways to build out VR in Fallout. From the Pip-Boy to what are those suits called? The kind of the mech type
power
suits.
Power armor.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot of fun stuff you could probably do with VR there, and the game engine looks like it would work well in VR, just in terms of the mechanics and how you can see your limbs and all of that stuff. And I think that'll be really cool. It is interesting that it's coming out on the HTC Vive, as you would expect, but also they point out that it's going to be on Scorpio in VR. So Xbox is Scorpio in VR.
I didn't see that. They said that? That's interesting.
The Road to VR article
I see what you're
mentions
saying.
that.
So that kind of confirms that there will be VR support coming soon, hopefully on the Scorpio.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much assumed that you can get some pretty inexpensive video cards nowadays. The Radeon R480X, I think, or is that what it is? Yeah,
you could be totally fucking. I had no idea.
Well, so that's a card made by AMD that costs retail about $200 and is capable of doing some decent VR. So, given that they used a Radeon card in the Xbox and I believe in the PS4 as well,
I think so.
It wouldn't be all that surprising to see them starting to use VR-capable chips in the next generation at relatively little additional expense.
Yeah. So, I hope so. Well, I'll be curious to see how that turns out. I'm very serious. I want to see videos of people losing their minds when the world crumbles around them in Bethesda's VR experience.
The interesting thing, the thing that I'm, I guess, a little concerned about, I guess it would be the right word, is if you think about something like the HTC Vive, where you've got the motion controllers in your hands, and if you lift your hand in VR, you can effectively see that hand.
Yeah.
So if you have a Pip-Boy, for example, lifting the motion controller and turning your wrist like you were looking at your watch, you would be able to render that in the game, and so it could show you your Pip-Boy and all of that stuff. Now, what's going to happen with the Xbox console? That's likely going to have to support your gamepad and not touch controllers, unless they're planning on announcing touch
That'd be,
controllers.
I think, a little too crazy for some people.
Yeah, although, Microsoft don't they have a partnership with Oculus?
I think they did say they were going to work with Oculus for VR. Like they want to let the industry move a little bit before they jump in.
Yeah, it'd be kind of interesting to see if they made the Oculus, basically able to plug into an Xbox Scorpio and use the Oculus attached to your Xbox. That would be one way of doing it, instead of building out your own motion controllers.
Sure.
But otherwise, you're potentially left with using standard gamepad, just like you would be in PSVR.
Or relying on the Kinect, which would be a nightmare.
Well, yeah, but you can't even do that anymore because they're not even selling the Kinect as part of the default Xbox bundle.
They've totally abandoned that thing.
And that was the one thing that really excited me about getting the Xbox One, was how they made the Kinect such an integrated part of the system. And they got feedback from fans that they wanted us, more focus on traditional gameplay, and they just dropped it. But I think that was one of the most innovative features of the Xbox One console.
And you might be right about that, but that was like you and like two other people felt that way, and that was the problem.
Well, I felt that way because I got burned, right? I got a day one Xbox, and nothing's taken advantage of the Kinect except to turn on the damn TV.
Yeah, well, it's a shame, but I think it's brought them more success. It's just unfortunate that people weren't willing to try and embrace something a little bit newer. But I'm sure I criticized them back in the day anyway, so I can't really say much.
Yeah, so we'll see. I don't know if Fallout 4 VR is one of the two games they're planning on announcing at E3, but I'd be really curious to see what they're up to, and if they can make a good VR game, I think that only that only suggests there's going to be good things coming for VR in the future. So I'm going to be keeping an eye out for it, and I'm sure you will as well.
Of course, it's what I do. I try and keep an eye on these things. But speaking of Bethesda, they did announce, along with Xbox, that they're both confirmed for E3, which is no real surprise for anyone, but they're both confirmed for Sunday, having their press conferences on Sunday, which is new for Xbox. It's where Bethesda has been, I think, the last 2 years, if I remember correctly. So the reason I wanted to bring this up is that, do you think there's a lot of strategy in Xbox moving, and do you think that Xbox having their conference earlier in the day than Bethesda can take the wind out of Bethesda's sails a little bit, as far as Bethesda's not going to be the first one out anymore?
Well, I think that Microsoft is probably going to talk a bit about Scorpio, and maybe talk about some of the VR specific features of the Scorpio platform. Mm-hmm. And it would be nice to do that before Bethesda reveals they're making Fallout for VR available on Scorpio, right? So
I see what you're saying.
That's my thought, you know.
So you think this might be a more calculated move than just two companies inadvertently ending up on the same day?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's... I mean, two of the companies ending up on the same day is fine. One's at 2 p.m. Pacific time, and one's at 7 p.m. Pacific time.
Right.
So it's not like they're too close together, or someone's trying to steal someone else's thunder.
Yeah.
But I think if I were Microsoft, looking at some of the stuff that's going to be announced Sunday, Monday, Tuesday related to VR, I want you as the consumer to know right from the start that the console that's coming out this fall is going to be able to support all of these games.
Yeah.
And that's got to be the message that runs through the week for you if you're Microsoft.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that actually makes more sense for the two console manufacturers to be out in front of the other conferences that go on. Like, I wouldn't mind if Sony moved to Sunday as well, and Bethesda moved to Monday or something, and you have the two console manufacturers go out, talk about what their plans are for their consoles across the next year, and then everyone else throughout the beginning of the week is like talking about the games that will be on those consoles. Right. I think that would be a good way to go. But I also, when I first heard this, I was wondering if Microsoft is trying to avoid, setting the tone in the morning and then allowing Sony the opportunity to kind of like have the final word at the end of the night. You know what I mean? Because that's what it's felt like the past couple of years. Is Microsoft sets this great tone in the morning. They have a very solid conference, and then Sony comes in and they get to be the last thing in everyone's mind. So maybe the converse of that is having Microsoft be the first thing that you think about when E3 starts.
So my take on it, not knowing anything, is that if I was Microsoft and I knew I was going to have a strong game showing throughout the course of the week with various publishers and various game developers talking about their games and how they're coming to Xbox, and potentially how they're coming to Scorpio, or potentially how they're coming to VR. I want to make that happen every day throughout the whole conference. And the only way you can get that to happen is if those publishers and game developers are allowed to talk about the features of Scorpio, and specifically VR features of Scorpio. Mm-hmm. So Microsoft has to make that stuff known and public before those developers can go and talk about them, right? Otherwise, people are like, oh, this is coming out for Xbox, but they can't talk about any of the stuff that Microsoft hasn't disclosed yet around VR or performance or console features. So Microsoft should get out there early on, talk about some of the features, and then let the game developers spend the rest of the week showing how they're going to be used and getting people excited about it. I mean, I think if that's what if it were up to me, that's what I'd be doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that theory holds a lot of water. I guess we'll just have to wait and see how it all turns out. But there's one last story I wanted to talk about in gaming, and it's kind of my pet project game, and it's Terraria.
Oh God. Okay.
Now, Terraria is celebrating. The developers are celebrating because they just sold. They just broke 200 million copies sold, which is.
You mean 20 million?
Oh, did I say 200 million? Man, I wish it was 200 million. 20 million copies sold, which is, an exceptionally high number for any game, really. But to think that, over the course of the last, 5-6 years, when this game released in May 2011, that it would sell, 20 million copies, this tiny indie project on PC only, I don't know. I just I am so in love with this game, and I'm so happy to see them succeeding because we've talked about this before. I love the way they do their business. If you bought this game in 2011, you have had across the last couple of years huge updates to the game at no cost that completely revolutionized the way you can play. Completely, they've added thousands and thousands of items. They've added 10. I don't know, probably between 8 and 10 different platforms. It's now available on PC, Mac, Linux, Xbox 360, Xbox One, PS3, PS Vita, PS4, Nintendo 3DS, Wii U, iOS and Android, Windows phones, and Amazon mobile devices.
That's pretty crazy.
It's just the amount of growth, and we've talked about it before with Rocket League. We've talked about it with Terraria. This is, I think, better than DLC. Than paid DLC, the way to get people to continuously come back to your game, continuously tell their friends about your game, and grow a community.
Yeah. I mean, the trend today is make a game and have a huge splash, or try and get as many pre-orders as possible. So it's good to see the other side where the focus on maintaining and cultivating your community, pays out in the end as well. And I think that's a really uplifting gaming story to see.
Yeah. And I think about, it's a story that we left off of the docket this week, but CD Projekt Red's net worth is now extremely high. I think it's 1.6 billion or something like that. They're succeeding in every way possible, and I think it's because they put in the time across the first 2 Witcher games, which were not as popular, but really giving something to the fans that they knew their fans would appreciate, and growing that community of people who really care about the game. And then you see The Witcher 3 come out, and everyone's out there evangelizing for that game, and I think it's a good lesson to learn for a lot of game developers. I'd like to see that happen more in gaming.
I agree.
But unless you have anything else to add, I'd say let's move on to a little bit of movie and TV news.
Sounds good.
So, Jon Favreau. I have a really hard time saying his name. Say it again.
Favreau.
Got it. He tweeted out a picture of Donald Glover with the caption, "I just can't wait to be king. #Simba." Which I mean, unless this is just a really weird art piece, I think it's an indication that Donald Glover will be playing Simba in his Lion King remake. And I wanted to know kind of your feelings about Donald Glover and what you think. I didn't even know that The Lion King was getting remade. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I didn't know either. I think that's pretty cool. I always like to see Donald Glover, in roles and in big roles. I've enjoyed some of his stand up, and I certainly enjoyed his work in Community. I have yet to see his TV show,
Atlanta.
But, But I am planning to watch that, to binge that as soon as time permits. So I've always liked him as an actor. So I'm happy for him, and curious to see how it turns out. I'm not going to be the first person in line to go see The Lion King again, but
sure,
it could be an interesting take on it.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, there's two sides to this. I mean, I'm really, I'm a huge fan of Donald Glover. I love, I think Camp is one of the best hip hop albums ever. But I have very weird taste in hip hop, I guess. I think that some of his stand up is exceptional. And I've really enjoyed him. I enjoyed him a lot as Troy in Community, and I enjoyed him in what was the Martian. He was in The Martian as well as like that weird nerdy scientist.
Yeah.
That the eccentric scientist. He was good in both of those roles, and they were very, very different. And I think I actually am curious about Atlanta as well. I've heard really good things about it. I just haven't had a chance to watch it yet. So his star is definitely rising, and I think he's going to be in the Han Solo movie as well. So I don't know. I'm curious to see like how. Yeah, I think he's actually playing young Lando Calrissian. I'm curious to see where his career will take him from here. And as far as the Lion King remake, I don't know. There are certain things that I don't know if they need to be remade, but this has brought it to my attention, and I'm more curious now than I was when I didn't know it existed. So
yeah. Well, one of the other interesting things that I was just looking up was that the fact that James Earl Jones will be the voice of Mufasa in that remake.
Oh, really?
Yep. So
it's gonna be a good remake. I might actually be on board.
Yeah. Well, Jon Favreau tweeted that right after the picture of Donald Glover.
Oh,
so
cool.
Yeah.
Now, the other bit of news that I wanted to talk about this week outside of gaming is that the first trailer for Retro Archer Season 8 is now live. And it's, I don't know, did you get a chance to look at it?
I didn't get a chance to look at the trailer, no. I still have a lot of catching up to do with Archer, so...
Man, it looks...
I've got a lot of
binging
incredible. To do there.
Yeah, no, I think I do as well. I think I missed the last season of Archer, but I've always loved that show, and the animation style looks better and better with every season that goes by. And I don't know how they're doing it, but they're like raising the bar for all other animation. Like, you should definitely check out this trailer when you get a chance, but like everything in this show looks so good. And it's just, it's never failed to make me laugh, several times per episode. It has a lot of these like surprisingly cool stories about, their adventures and stuff like that. So I don't know. I'm very much on board for more Archer. But that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about as far as that this week. So do you want to dive into some of the questions?
Well, the only other thing that I had to add was just a quick note on movies that I am excited about and no longer excited about. Okay. So I've seen that Logan has gotten some really good reviews.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm definitely looking forward to that movie. Can't wait to see that. One that I was kind of interested in, The Great Wall, it's the one with Matt Damon, has gotten surprisingly poor reviews, so that's kind of, I've lost what minor curiosity I had in that at this point.
Right out the window.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Now, is that, I didn't actually follow any of the news about, or like, I have no idea what the Great Wall is. Is it about China? Like, is it about the Great Wall of China? Or like, what is it?
Yeah, yes, it is. So, of course, they get a white actor to come in.
I was going to say, where does Matt Damon factor into this?
I don't know much about the story. Maybe he's some dude from England or, something like that. But anyway, it's about the Great Wall, and the purpose of putting it up is protecting against what, and apparently the what is, I guess, some kind of dragon or monsters, something like that. So
okay, so it's kind of a supernatural take on.
Yeah, I didn't realize that either, and so just the combination of it being some sort of supernatural thing and it not being very good is just enough to put me off that movie.
That's kind of a shame. I mean, that sounds like it could have been cool. Were you expecting something more of like a historical, like, not historical fiction, but like more historical than fiction?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm trying to see who Matt Damon does play someone with like an English name. So It could have been worse. It could have been worse.
That's good.
He's not playing. Yeah. Okay. Good. His name is William Guerin or something in the movie. Yeah, William Guerin. Okay.
Okay.
Dodged a bullet there. Anyway, let's get into some of the questions.
Yeah.
Now, the first question comes from. Let's see. Who do we want to take? You don't really know a lot about Ghost in the Shell, did you? Do you? Did you?
No, unfortunately, I don't. Never really got into that.
Well, Andrew Metalmoss wants to know if of the Ghost in the Shell trailers that we've watched, can you talk about what you think, or if you're excited. So I'll just take this one real quick. I'm a little weirded out by the now. See if you can follow along, Paul, as someone who hasn't seen these trailers. I'm a little weirded out by the naked suit Scarlett Johansson invisibility cyborg thing. I don't have much
I'm following along now.
Okay. I don't know. I don't really have any connection to the original work, so I don't know if it makes sense. I'm curious to see how. I'm actually more curious. It's one of those movies I'm more curious about how it's received by the audience than actually having any desire to go see it myself. I just kind of want to see what happens,
Well, there's been a lot of controversy around it, right? With Scarlett Johansson playing what is supposed to be a Japanese character.
I think Japanese, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think given the fact that it is a well-known story, right, or at least a well-known universe. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of pressure on it from fans who want to see it portrayed well.
Yeah.
And then the addition of having a white actor play a role that you would think would be played by a Japanese actor is also going to add to the controversy. And so I think, maybe that's part of the marketing, but it's it's either going to do really well if it surprises everyone, or it's going to be a complete flop because people will, just kind of the fans that they need, the kind of the people who know the story that they need to show up and get their friends interested in watching the movie. If they can't get them on board, then it's going to go to either of the extremes in terms of its success.
Yeah, I think it'll. Like I said, I'm very curious to see more how it does than any that totally outstrips any interest I have in the movie. But another question comes in from Andrew Manamas, who wants to know, what are your thoughts on the Ubisoft Club and how trophies and achievements can garner you in-game items like skins or in-game money? So I thought I would bring this up kind of as an analog to our DLC conversation from earlier in the show. Have you interacted with Ubisoft games like this before?
Sure.
What you're talking about?
I play most of my games on the PC, and you have to interact with Uplay and the Ubisoft Club in order to play them.
Yeah.
Because even if you buy a game through Steam, you still have to activate that game through the Uplay client.
Right.
So yes, I have. I've experienced all of the trophies and achievements things, and getting points and spending those points on skins or items in the game. It's relatively harmless. I think it's how they want to make sure people keep using, or people don't rebel too much against Ubisoft having their own game launcher and DRM system and things like that, as opposed to just using Steam, which is much more convenient for people because they've got all their friends in Steam. And now if they buy a game, even if it's through Steam, like if you buy Watch Dogs 2 in Steam, you have to download the Uplay client or the Ubisoft client, and it's not terribly convenient,
right?
And so this is one way to make sure that people feel like they're getting something out of using it. And it's not like it's going to cost Ubisoft any money to give them, their character an additional robe or, backpack or whatever.
Yeah, a new set of boots.
I mean, look, I've seen it through all of the all of the Assassin's Creed games, all the Far Cry games, all of the the Division and Watchdog games. It's been there. I tend to ignore it.
Yeah.
And if I've got like a bunch of extra points or whatever, I'll just I'll buy the 20-point in-game soundtrack or something like that. I've got like 800 points, so spending 20 on in-game soundtrack is whatever.
Yeah.
Like it's meaningless. I didn't spend any money to get it, so it's free.
I think
you
concerned. Calling it harmless is probably that's essentially what it is. It's harmless. It's like a little something extra for continuing to play Ubisoft games. It does give them that extra control that they want, so I guess it works for them. So I don't know. I mean, on the as the end user or whatever, I think it's fine. Like, you could do worse, you could do more, but whatever. So the next question comes from Eric Myers, who wants to know kind of something about like with what you were talking about. With Logan and Deadpool both having been reviewed very well, should Fox continue to do one-off X-Men movies or for other characters?
I don't know. Why don't you take this one? What are your thoughts on that?
So, I mean, after hearing how well Logan was reviewed and my own interest in seeing it, like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get out to the theater to watch it, but I'll certainly watch it on Netflix when it comes there, I guess. I think these one-off stories have a better chance of success than trying to build an ensemble kind of Avengers-esque cast of characters that have their own movies that are all building in the same universe towards like a single goal. I think these one-off stories are more interesting. It feels much more like the Netflix series for these other smaller characters that Marvel has, that have been able to tell more intimate, smaller stories that mean a lot to the people in them and to the person watching them, but aren't as cosmically challenging as whatever all the X-Men would have to get together to take on. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think they need to have a good balance of things, and that's really what they're going for. You have things like the Avengers or even Captain America where they've got, 18 different characters, and you're splitting time between a bunch of different storylines, and it just kind of gets... It's too... shallow and broad, and it's nice to be able to focus on a single character, maybe get their origin story or some other significant story and have them focus and really develop a character that you might not have seen in as much detail previously. And and then at the same time that they're doing a smart thing by breaking up some things into, say, a 2-hour movie where they where they can get some of these more well-known characters like Logan, Wolverine, and Deadpool, where they know they can probably draw an audience and really go in on the movie. And as a side note, it's also good that they're making these rated R as well, so that they don't have to pull any punches. And then it's also good for kind of the lesser-known characters to have those Netflix series where you can really dig in, as you said, and start to build up that emotional connection to the character. I mean, I think people going in to see Logan, most of them already have an emotional connection to Wolverine, right? And you couldn't have a Jessica Jones 2-hour movie and expect the same thing to happen. And that's why I think building her story up over a series of episodes lets you see the origin, build that connection, and then get really invested in the character.
Yeah. So I think that's all the questions we're going to do this week. We are running out of time, and I'm getting incredibly hungry. It's time to cook dinner. So that's, I think, where we'll bring it to a close this week, unless you had anything else you wanted to add.
I am all set.
Cool. All right. Well, then, thank you, everyone, for listening or watching if you're checking this out on YouTube. Thank you, Paul, for joining me this week. And thank you, everyone, for your questions that you contributed to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. If you'd like to follow us on Twitter, you can follow me at Jack is Gaming. You can follow Paul at Paul is Gaming. And you can follow Knerds Podcast, at Knerds Podcast for all the news and updates from Nerds Online, anything that we might be doing as far as new projects or streams that I do occasionally. I'm trying to do those at least once a week. I've been playing Neo recently, which has been fun. And I played Rocket League the other night on stream and dominated.
Awesome.
I felt so good. Yeah, because 50% of the time I go into Rocket League and just get my ass handed to me. But for one glorious hour, me and my friend Dave were putting on a show.
Cool.
Yeah, it was very nice. But besides that, I think that's everything. So thanks again, everyone, for watching, and keep gaming.